Businesses across the country either closing for now or changing the way they operate in sometimes radical ways. I imagine that also means they're changing the way they have to market to consumers. And maybe even the consumers themselves are changing the avenues in which they receive marketing. So to help figure out how that's going, and maybe some small business owners out there can take some advice here, we've got Eric Cavoli from Cashman Katz joining us to talk about marketing in the pandemic age. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you just start by enlightening us and letting us know sort of how the trends are changing here with advertising?
Well, if anyone watches television, for instance, to pick one medium right now, you'll notice that, I'd say half or more than half of the messages out there are directly about COVID or related or influenced in some way. So what it means is businesses are doing basically two things. They're not being quiet, and they're changing their messaging. They're changing either what they're saying or they're changing the tone of what they're saying. And that's really in line with, what we've been telling all of our clients or anyone else that will listen is be careful, but do not be quiet. And, our business is about connecting with the consumer. And so we need to understand what's on their mind. And right now, what's on their mind is so much different than even a few weeks or a few months ago. So instead of a consumer that's eager to get excited about a pair of pants, you have a consumer that is worried and confused and feels helpless and needs reassurance or needs to feel useful. So brands that can figure out a way to connect on that level are the ones that are a little bit more successful right now.
Okay, so that's talking about the message. I also want to talk about the medium because I keep going back and forth as to having a more captive audience with people at home alone. Is that leading to more television and digital consumption, or is it still leading? Is that getting more than offset by the fact that the economy shut down, so there's just less ad revenue in general? I keep going back and forth, and I don't know what the reality is, and I'm not sure if you've seen any larger trends that support one or the other.
Yeah, and it's not unexpected, that TV viewership is really high right now. Watching you folks on the news is a pastime for many people right now. So those spots are becoming very coveted for advertisers. Now you have to compare that to the fact that the messages have changed so much, and there's so much noise and so much communication about COVID specifically, that your message, even though you have more eyes on it, it's trickier to break through. It's trickier to connect with people, Digitally, the same thing. People are just on devices more often, so there's a lot more digital spend going on. People are really seizing that, where other types of mediums like, radio and outdoor and things like that are becoming a little bit less important to marketers right now because the numbers aren't there as much.
Yeah. So what advice can you give for businesses trying to stay relevant here in terms of either changing their messaging, or maybe this is a time for different businesses and industries to get in mediums where they wouldn't otherwise do it?
Yeah, so I'm the creative director of the agency, so my focus is purely on brand and on messaging. And I would answer that question from that perspective that, at the end, when this is over, you want to look back and say, well, how did we do? How are we going to be perceived when this is all over? So while you have to do some things in the immediate, you really have to think long term. Did we say the right things? Did we do the right things? Did we act responsibly? Did we let our consumers know we're still there for them? Did we change our message or even our way of doing business so we could continue to service them during this time? So when you look at brands, they all have a responsibility to do the right thing now. And some have a different type of responsibility. Healthcare brands, for instance, a huge responsibility to communicate, to provide that updated healthcare-related information. Some of the biggest brands in the world, by virtue of their influence alone, have a responsibility to help out. You see the things that brands like Coke and Nike are doing, talking about social distancing, Nike urging everyone to play inside. They are using their influence to do their part. Now, smaller businesses, their responsibility is different. Janet's Cheese Emporium does not have to remind us to wash our hands every day. That's not her job. But she has to find a way to connect with her consumers. through social media or whatever, and let them know she's still here, their company's still here, and when all this is over, we're going to get together and everything's going to be great again.
Right. Okay, well, Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. That is the big challenge, connecting with people emotionally and brand-wise without having to connect with them physically. So, Eric from Cashman Katz, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
All right, thanks, Tim.